Recording. So thank you for joining Manhattan Community Board 3, the land use meeting for July 2022. We'll go ahead and start with any comments to the minutes from June. If there are any comments, please let me know, or any adjustments. And if they're not, we'll consider them approved and then take attendance. Great, so I don't hear any comments, so we'll move into attendance. Okay, so if you are here in this meeting, please just indicate here or present. Anisha Stephen, here. Jake Gold.
Here.
Herman Hewitt. Trevor Holland.
Here.
Herman's here.
Oh, hey Herman.
How are you?
Olympia Kazi. Damara said she would be absent. Jackie Wong, you joined? No. Dominic Berg and Steve Herrick. Okay. So with that, we will move into district needs. Susan, do you want to give an overview because Jake is new to our committee?
Sure, my apologies to people who've heard this 500 times. So the district needs statement is the first step in our budget process. We will hopefully be finalizing, making this near final as far as ideas and concepts tonight. And then in October, we will be voting on budget priorities, which will be capital and expense priorities. The district needs is a planning document that describes our conditions and assesses unmet needs and gives, if possible, strategies to meet unmet needs. The strategies would not be specific funding issues. They might be programming that will then lead to programming to funding issues. It is not a policy document, and it's not a wish list of all of our unmet needs. We try and list the priorities so they don't get lost. The community board several years ago voted on a style that would be direct and succinct and bullet points as much as possible so that the needs stand out and not be lost in a wordy document. I think that's pretty much it. And one of the things we've been trying to do in committees this year, not at the meeting, but to find out where we can wordsmith to have less words, more direct statements. But we will do that. We can do that after the meeting, particularly if we identify areas here. And then this will come back to the community board and will be voted on in October with the budget priorities. There any questions?
So just to sort of reiterate a couple of things, this is not a policy document necessarily. It's really just a statement of the needs. A lot of the information that you'll see comes from sort of like research profiles or studies from various places. There's, as Susan mentioned, there's a separate process where we sort of identify areas in the fiscal year budget or the upcoming budget that has, you know, the funding opportunities to meet the needs. But this is like really just a description of the needs. It's weird it's hard to wrap your brain around sometimes because I think we tend to go into solutions and policy answers to things, but it's not always, well, it is not that. So Paul, do you want to pull, oh, Susan, go ahead.
I just say one thing, you reminded me of one thing I forgot, and that's the documentation. We try and make this very well documented so that it has strength. And you'll see, and I think even the draft, we've mentioned places where we need citations, but the office will look those up. There are areas where we know that there are citations.
So Paul is pulling up the district needs. What we did is we went ahead and the district office, Susan and Drew, who's on, went through and updated a lot of the statistics that were from the last year's district needs, and updated to the most recent and relevant information. I think that the purpose of today is really to make sure that all of the concepts that we want included are included here. I think there's still an opportunity to sort of, as Susan mentioned, get through any, if we need to find additional data on a specific thing, we can, but we want to make sure that everything is captured. There wasn't, at least from what I saw, a ton of difference between last year and this year. Like I didn't get a lot of comments from committee members about new things to put in, just a few. So we'll go through those. And then also, just to reiterate, this is for fiscal year 23. So it's a year from now. So we describe the needs sort of with the most current information, but it's really about as the city or other stakeholders look at the needs to develop things for the next fiscal year. Does that make sense? Well, it makes sense, sort of. So I'm going to start at the top and go through what the changes are. And feel free to raise your hand if you have any comments for things that should be changed. So at the very top, one of the first things that we changed is a little bit of a qualifier around the fluctuations of COVID-19 on the housing market. The housing market has been, we've seen a lot of different things happen over the past year, 2 years. And I think we're in a specific housing crunch at the moment. So putting that in there to say that our community has become unaffordable to a lot of residents, but we do not fully know the extent of what a tightened market means going forward. So these next 3 bullets are updates from statistics that we had last year. So as many of you know, Community District 3 has a really high income disparity. We have some really low income residents and some high income residents, which makes it a fairly unique district amongst the city. So there are just some information about that. And I think we had some new statistics in there. We couldn't find or I think at least it indicates we couldn't find the increased median asking rents yet, but we're still looking for that. We have the 2020 statistics, so we'll keep that in there for the time being and mark that it's 2020. And then we did find that 36%, up from 24% of low income renter households in Community District 3 are rent burdened and spend more than half their monthly income on housing. Paul, do you want to scroll down? Thank you. So this little highlighted section is, it indicates that we might want to look at the statistic again under the city's Housing New York plan, which is the previous administration's plan. There were 900 some odd new affordable housing units built, and 25% were targeted at households earning more than $85,000. I wasn't sure if we wanted to include anything about the new administration's housing plan, but I don't think we know enough really about what that is exactly and what the impacts will be.
What plan?
But that's sort of the statistic from like the previous 8 years of housing development in our district. And then Drew, I think we added in this statistic. Do you want to explain maybe what it is and why I've included it?
Yes, just a second, let me reread it.
It's from the ANHD report.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So from the ANHD report, so this is just talking about like the unaffordability. So again, basically the ANHD report is gives kind of an unaffordability score to like all the neighborhoods for the previous year. So they look at a lot of different things like how many unaffordable units are built in the neighborhood, how many, things with NYCHA complaints, things with low-income housing tax credit units that are going expired. And so this one just kind of exemplifies how like
we're not meeting the needs of
community district.
affordability in the district.
Yeah, exactly. And so then this little snippet just talks about how like community district 3 is like the only affordable district within like lower Manhattan as compared to like CD 1 and 2. And so like obviously need to preserve that, otherwise no one will be able to afford to live in lower Manhattan.
Great. And ANHD, for those who don't know, is the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development. They're a coalition of community-based organizations that do advocacy work. So at the bottom, there's a little blurb about, this is a holdover from last year. It says there's still need for more deeply affordable housing in CD3, which is correct. But the Federal American Rescue Plan could be a crucial once in a generation resource to meet this need, but we do not know exactly how these funds will be distributed to local government. It should be carefully watched over the next fiscal year. So I struck that out. If anybody else has comments about not taking out or rewording it, please let me know. But since this is for a year from now and most of the American Rescue Plan has been distributed to various jurisdictions, I don't know how relevant that particular comment is any longer. Do we want to pause? Are there any questions from anybody on anything that we've seen? Any comments from anyone on that, the first sections? All right, we'll keep on going.
I don't.
Thanks, Herman. Let's keep on going and we'll see. Oh, Arnett.
Hey, quick question. Our budget wouldn't allow us to hire a consultant that does like market studies that would that are professional based to find out what the average asking price for the rents are for our community.
I think that information's available.
We look for those resources. They're often like ANHD or the Furman Center or other research and advocacy institutions often collect that. It was interesting in the Furman Center neighborhood report, it was just one of the statistics that they have not updated yet. So it wasn't in there, but usually we were able to pull that from resources that already exist. We don't really commission that kind of study for the district needs usually, because those studies are point in time studies, and we look for, like when a research institute does it, they gather information over like a year or something, rather than like a very specific current market moment. Okay, so we'll keep on going down. We have a section called Build and Preserve Affordable Housing. So it basically describes that there is a need for more deep affordable housing in Community District 3, and the city should look for new opportunities for affordable housing to be built, including senior supportive housing for the formerly homeless, hotel and commercial conversions to residential uses, community opportunities to purchase distressed properties, and long-term preservation of existing affordable housing in the district. It calls for the need for more family-sized affordable housing and 2 and 3 bedroom units. And then there's a note that this home ownership rate, there wasn't an updated one, so this is the same one from 2020. I see 2 hands up. Susan, do you want to go first?
Yes, so what we see in the statistics year after year is increase in very low income people and an increase in very high income people. And every year we're losing more and more middle income. And, you know, I would like to suggest that maybe there's a need for both more deeply affordable housing and moderate middle income housing.
I think that's right. And I think, Jake, your comment was sort of getting to that. We might need to wordsmith it a little bit to make it connect. But Susan, I think that that idea, I think we need to definitely highlight as a need. So Jake, I put some of your language in here. We'll get to it. The next little paragraph on this is sufficient funding for capital projects will be required to ensure that affordable housing can be constructed. Community-based organizations like Cooper Square, Goals, AFI, et cetera, are important in the neighborhood for supporting tenants.
Well, one of the organization with the most affordable units is not listed there.
Which one? Should we include it in?
Lower East Side People's Mutual Housing.
Oh, right. We have them listed under, are they listed in they're the CLT, right? Mutual housing.
I don't know that they're in the CLT section. But if I could bring up, maybe we want to have a consistent policy, because in arts and culture, we specifically took out the names of any specific organizations, particularly since some of these are members of our committee. You know, what is the purpose actually of giving the specific names, and who else are we going to leave out?
Well, it's only those are the only viable housing organization in the neighborhood. Most of the others have all gone out of business or anything. So, and these are the only ones that totally exist that HPD actively funds or working with at this time.
So I would suggest then that nobody who works for Cooper Square, CAD, Goals, or AFI should be able to vote on this, because we're asking for funding. I don't see the reason for putting in the specific names as opposed to just including community-based organizations.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because you're avoiding a conflict of interest also. If you just take.
Trevor, Jake, any other committee members have any thoughts about keeping or removing the names of the specific CBOs?
I don't have any thoughts on that. I don't know enough procedurally to weigh in either way. It does seem like it would be more flexible to take them out. I'm not sure what it adds to leave them in, but I'll defer to the experts here.
You're an expert. You're gonna be one.
Actually, Goals is not a housing development organization, it's a housing advocacy organization. They have one building that they sponsored 20 years ago that is under the Lower East Side People's Mutual Housing portfolio. So the only active ones are Cooper Square is not that active, but they manage his housing at this time. But I would go with Susan saying just say community-based organization. There's always been a conflict because all the housing organization sits on the community board at one time. Actually, 50% or more were people.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should.
Two of these are people on this committee. So, Paul, you have your
Including
hand
me.
raised?
Yeah.
Yes. Paul, you have your hand raised, but could you also strike through the including Cooper Square committee?
Sure.
Thank you.
So just Susan, because you've been to the other committee meetings, in their portions of the district need statements, there have been no reference to any specific organizations, correct?
We discussed it in arts and culture and made a conscious decision to take out the specific names. But so this makes it consistent, but also, and you know, we never caught this before, it's also conflict of interest to vote on funding for your organization. And we don't want people to not be able to vote.
Or have to recuse yourself.
Right. but nothing happened in human services that had.
It didn't occur. There wasn't, the issue.
There was
didn't
nothing that
occur.
occurred. Okay.
Right.
So make sure. Thank you.
Okay, so the last point in this section, Jake, this is your language that you provided, but let's talk about how we maybe connect it to the point that Susan made about how, because we have such a stratified neighborhood, how we have a need for deeply affordable housing, but also middle income housing. So maybe, Paul, do you want to go up, like just go up to the top of the page so we can see more of it? Yeah. Where can we incorporate that in here? I think the point that you're trying to make in this statement is that because we don't have a lot, like we lack all types of housing in this neighborhood, like a full supply of the housing that we need, like easing burdens to build is beneficial. But I think we need to describe the need a little bit more.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what I'm getting at is that under the current structure where it costs so much to go through approval processes in the city council, the only things that get built are the really expensive buildings. And so easing the procedural roadblocks helps build deeply affordable housing, but also just middle income housing. I don't know exactly how to incorporate that sentiment into that first paragraph on the page, though.
Susan, do you want to?
Yeah, I just would, I'm asking for clarification really, because you mentioned city council. Are you talking about the administrative and bureaucratic roadblocks that exist, or are you talking about city council votes?
I'm talking about administrative roadblocks that exist. The mayor has been pretty clear, I think, that he is not interested in taking up on his own accord, allowing, you know, more neighborhoods to build more affordable housing by right. And so I'm inclined to think that one thing that we could do as a community board, if we're interested in seeing more middle income housing built, is put in as plain terms as possible. And I recognize these are not plain terms because I wrote them in the middle of a lawyer day. That we would like CB3 to be a place where he will say, this is a place you can build middle income housing by allowing those types of buildings by right.
If I could ask another clarification, because I'm seeing sort of a conflict when you say to be able to build as of right. That's not administrative, that's changing zoning, which is very different. So that's not administrative. So
yeah, I think you're right that I'm conflating two things. I think I am saying both that it would be good, and I'm not sure if this is the incorrect place to be raising that the mayor should be initiating zoning changes, but I think the mayor should also be looking for, and the administrative state generally should be looking for opportunities to make housing easier to develop rather than harder, so that we can see more middle income housing built. And I don't know exactly where those pressure points are. I know, you know, in my work in New York and outside New York, that they exist and there are many of them, but I couldn't spell out exactly which they are.
So I think one of it veers into like a policy proposal of some kind. And so I think what we need to do is say that there is a need for more deeply affordable housing in addition to middle income housing, because there is not enough supply of housing in the district. And I do think your point about administrative and bureaucratic hurdles is a true one. I think maybe we include it in here and then we can spend some time outside of the meeting. I can spend some time outside of the meeting finding like research around it. Because I think changing the way that we think about zoning to build housing is a policy proposal that I see everywhere. But I think what we're saying is the need here is that the supply isn't there. So we want to encourage more supply to meet the need.
I
Does that make
wonder,
sense?
I
Okay.
wonder if you couldn't include that or incorporate that up where we kind of talk about the income diversity and maybe highlight some more statistics about the loss of middle income individuals and kind of how it's spreading out to the like low income and high income, and maybe incorporate it somewhere in there.
Okay, that sounds good. So Drew, could you make a note of that? And then for here in this section, I'm going to remove so I think we should say unnecessary administrative and bureaucratic roadblocks in the approval process are some of the largest financial costs, because I still think that's true, in building new affordable homes, building new affordable and middle income homes, which often renders desirable projects financially unfeasible. Paul, did you get that? Unnecessary administrative and bureaucratic roadblocks in the approval process are some of the largest financial costs in building new affordable and middle income homes. You can take it just
Oh, I run into this problem like once a day.
bureaucratic.
Yeah.
I know, I don't know how to spell it either.
And it's impossible to spell check. We all have the same
It's
problem.
okay, we'll
We'll do it. We'll do
I did it
Yeah.
right. I got it right. I Googled it first on my phone. All right. What's the next thing?
Roadblocks in the approval process are some of the largest financial costs in building new and middle income, new affordable and middle income homes. Sorry, my bad.
Just want to interject real quick.
Yeah.
How have we defined middle income?
I think that we need to define it. That's what Drew was saying, that at the top, when we talk about like the income statistics, we will include some information about what middle income is. I
Because
think
middle
that
income could be $2.25, a $250,000 a year. That could be middle income.
I think we, look at the middle bands, like in the Furman report, and use their middle bands, probably.
I think what Susan had brought up and Jake have also brought up is that we don't have enough housing for many different types of people in the district. And so we've specifically called out deeply affordable housing, which is true as a need. But we also don't have opportunities for workforce housing, middle income housing. There are different ways to describe it. And I think we should also include that here. I think that Trevor, you're right. We don't have all of the specific definitions on hand at this moment. But I think if this concept makes sense as a need that our community has, we can include it in here and we can do some work to figure out what that is. There's still an opportunity to review this again in September.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said. It's just that I've been part of many discussions where the developer will come in with certain income bands and people will say, oh, that's too high, even though it might be defined as middle income. And I'm just, in terms of our district need, because 125 AMI might be middle income, 165 AMI might be middle income. At least that's how the definition is when you look on the HPT website. So I'm saying, if we're asking for that also, then I just see some critique from people when they see these middle income bands on these developments, that why are we bringing in middle income, which it technically is, when we should be bringing in deeply affordable. And I'm not disagreeing with what you said at all.
That's a good point though, Trevor. Jake?
I'm sorry, I hit something on my keyboard and I can't take my hand down. Give me a second.
I'll try to.
Sorry. No, I raised mine.
I'll try
Does
to.
anybody else have any discussion on that?
I just wanted to say that, the very low affordability has always been a priority in this community. However, this community has drastically changed. When I moved here 50 years ago, there was a lot of affordable middle income, which is why I was able to move here. So people who, are civil servants, public servants, that kind of thing, can no longer afford to move into this neighborhood. It's just a change. It's a change because the neighborhood has changed. Last year, we had the highest income diversity of all 59 boards in the whole city. We are no longer on top, even though our gap has widened. Other boards are in worse shape.
I think, to Trevor, your point though, I think that we need to be clear that the priority is still deeply affordable housing, but we do see a need also for making sure that, however we want to describe middle, like workforce housing, which I think is what we're actually talking about, that we also see that as a need. So, okay, if we just go back to this proposal part, I think that we should take out the last sentence, Jake, if you're okay with that. To facilitate the construction of much needed housing, the city will need to be proactive in streamlining processes and allowing new housing throughout CD3 to be built as of right, because I think that veers into policy.
Yeah, that's
I
good
think,
with me.
okay. And I think that we can just say that the need is the streamlined approvals and all of those things to increase supply. So we'll, Paul, will you take out the last sentence? So as of right now, the only part where middle income is included is right here. We haven't actually included a substantive point about that. I think, Susan, let me know what you think about this. Would it be okay to say this is a concept that we want to think about a little bit more and then come back to it?
I'm wondering what it is, whatever, whatever you think, but I think the statistics are very clear. The statistics show that we have shrinking people in the middle, and which is not to say we also we also need deeply affordable, but we're losing the middle, and that's giving our community the diversity gap, which causes displacement and many other things. And what, if you want to put it down, I'm just suggesting it. I'm suggesting it because of the data, but however you want to handle it is fine.
Arnett, you have a comment?
Yeah. In discussing, Trevor made really, really excellent points. In discussing income bands, it all depends on the agency in which is getting the approval or approving private developers for development and what is their income band. Like you can do tax credit, you can do 421A. I think for our particular community, the best income level that I think that describes all of us is if we use the HUD. I put the link in the chat, the HUD income levels, because it goes from extremely low, low, and I think I forgot the 3. It's on there. And for the extremely low, it's saying that the medium is 94,000 for the city. For Manhattan, not the city, just for Manhattan. And within that, it goes from extremely low, low, very low, or what have you. But I think it's more consistent in where our community is, especially in the communities that are starting more development, like on South Street, where we have extremely low income residents. And these extremely low income residents are also working residents and not necessarily on fixed income. And this guideline that I posted, that I put in the chat, basically is more consistent to the needs of for me, what I see is more consistent to the needs of the community and what really works well in getting, identifying who needs assistance. And instead of saying just middle income, because like Trevor said, middle income can vary based on the statistics. This would basically says like the very low and low incomes of the city, for which we can pick out and choose which incomes are most at need in our community versus trying to decipher which one is which. And you can say using this guide, X, Y, and Z. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I didn't get the chat, Paul. I don't know if there's a way to send it to everybody.
Um,
When we're talking about
There's nothing in
low-
the chat, sorry.
yes, there is. But it only went to me.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna try and copy and paste it to go to everyone.
Herman, what was your comment?
Yeah, when we talk about low and low, there's a number of things we gotta have to figure out. How low it is before we have to find the subsidy to manage the projects. I mean, you know, my experience is that we have low, but we got a lot of subsidies before. We're getting less subsidies for the low income units at this point. And those people have been there, you know, projects in the original stuff. A lot of them has moved up to middle income. The thing about why most of them, it's voluntary leaving, because all you have to do is recertify every year and you pay a little more for your rent. But a lot of those people are going to the point where they no longer get the subsidy, so they have to come up with the full amount of whatever is assigned to them each year. So our problem is more how to retain those people when they reach somehow middle income, because they spend time, you know, get little education, a better job than they were 30 years ago when we do this project. And so, you know, our tax credits, we are purchasing those buildings under the tax credits, but they are limited, very limited to whatever the people are paying without subsidy. And so therefore, we'll find out that there are people in the building that cannot move because they can afford anything outside of what we provide in our low income housing or stuff. And most of those are not low in anymore.
Right.
They may be low income, and some of them have moved up to the middle class. So what we have is more overcrowding, and that's why I understand that we need more low income housing, because our projects are all jammed up with people that cannot afford to move anywhere. And their children have grown up in those places and need places for themselves and cannot find places in the neighborhood where they, or even near neighborhood, that they could have affordable housing. So those are the people, for me, I'm looking at, not new people coming in, but the people that we have that we cannot provide affordable housing for.
Thanks, Herman. Yeah, that makes sense to me also. Susan and then Trevor.
Yeah, I think while everyone's bringing up a lot of very true and good point. I think it's 100% too technical for this document.
Exactly,
And I
but
think we
I
should
just had
just
to say it.
no, but I think there's a, I think it's good to bring it up. I was going to suggest that that this be really a subject that the committee look at in depth separately from this. And if you want to take positions with a lot more research on, what our priorities are, and just for this document, have the deeply affordable as well as middle income. And just leave it at that and deal with the others as a whole separate issue, because it needs a lot of research and discussion.
I do think, Trevor, to your point though, I think there are two ways to approach this. I do think we should specifically in the income section, when we talk about the description of the residents that live here, we can highlight, Drew, as you mentioned, the middle income statistics. I think that perhaps we don't have enough information and definition, as Trevor has said, about what we're calling middle income here. And we should maybe just keep it as the affordable housing, deeply affordable housing. But I do think we should add in a sentence or two about increasing supply of housing or options of housing for residents. Trevor?
Yeah, don't disagree with what everyone is saying, but if I'm a developer and I read this and I come in with 165 AMI as my affordable component, then I would expect for all of CB3 to vote in harmony with my 165 AMI, because now I'm providing middle income. I just don't think that's going to happen. I'm not saying it doesn't belong here or the wording is off, but I think we just need to make sure, because what everyone is saying is correct, especially as you get older and people start to get into that band and they look in surprise and say, oh, I'm middle income, I didn't realize that. That we just need to look at what that means. Because if you come in at 165, that's middle income.
Right. So why don't we take out the middle income? We only have included it once here. We should still add it to the income section as being a change that we see. And then I don't have the language on the top of my head right now, but we'll put together a sentence or two just about supply and needing options for a diversity of residents that live here. But keep this section as the deeply affordable. Because Trevor, I think you're right? And we see this in land use all the time, that when developers come to us, there is pushback on even something like 60% AMI, honestly. Drew, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think if we go back into the numbers, it probably won't fall into the middle income. Actually, it'll probably fall into actually being more low income and not necessarily extremely low income like a lot of the focus is. So okay. Middle income might not be the greatest label for that, but we understand what we're talking about. But it also might be, I wonder if we could put in something more generally just wording about having a diversity of housing options so that people that are within the neighborhood are able to stay there, even if they are able to, advance socioeconomically and something along those lines. And having a spectrum of housing for the community.
I think that's right. Jake?
I just wanted to agree with that. I pay $1,700 a month in rent, and it is going up to $2,600 at the end of August. So I am squarely what I would consider middle income. I'm by no means, a low income person in my mind. I don't really want for anything, but I am being actively pushed out of CD3. So I think it's worth, definitely underscoring that fact that a lot of people who don't see themselves necessarily as low income could be covered by construction of new, affordable housing. But when we think about affordable housing, we think about subsidized, and there's plenty of unsubsidized housing that can be built that is still workable for working people.
And I think that is a different point, right? That all of this, most of what we've described here is the need for subsidized housing. And I think a diversity of supply also includes naturally occurring affordable housing of many kinds, or private housing, market rate housing that serves a diversity of, sorry, there's stuff happening outside my window, that accommodates a wide variety of people. So I think, again, we'll include that point about that need of diversity of housing supply, but I think for these specific points, we'll keep it as the deeply affordable. We'll move on unless there are any other points about this. Cool. So let's move on to the CLTs. So this is the language that we had last year, providing support for community land trusts. So we list Cooper Square. There is, there's been legislation that's introduced, so like operational support for land trusts, but I think the need is still, the desire for more land trusts to be in the neighborhood still exists. We'll go down. So preserve the viability of HDFCs. No changes there. No language changes that anybody had. It seems like that's a need that we still have. Expand and support residential resiliency upgrades. So obviously this is an important need for our community, given where we're located. And then we'll have a section on NYCHA and Section 8 housing. So one thing we did add, so we have the capital improvements and repairs. Drew was able to find a statistic about actually just, explaining the need in the district for NYCHA capital repairs and sort of service issues. So I think that was a good addition to demonstrating the need. I think we don't have an updated statistic on this, the internet service providers. I think we need to find that if we can. But still, certainly, I think the pandemic showed us that there's a digital divide in many parts of our community, and specifically NYCHA. And then the last section is community participation in Next Gen NYCHA in Brad, and then I added the Trust for Public Housing, since that has recently been added to the toolbox of NYCHA programs. And the section really calls for community engagement with residents and transparency from NYCHA as they do repairs or work with the NYCHA community. Is there anything that we're missing? Anything that anybody wants to add? Otherwise.
Do we have any statistics about those housing that is partially or probably fully operated by private individuals, the New York City Housing Authority buildings? Or how well they are running? They may be different from NYCHA management itself, but how well are they running? Is there any advocate that comes up with?
Have we had any RAD or PAC conversions in?
Well, we have the only thing I can think of would be compost, half of compost. Is that what you're referring to, Herman?
Yes.
So yeah, it's running extremely, they're very happy. And the part of compost that, is looking at the air rights, they want to have the same management company because everyone thinks they're doing very well.
Well, they're living next door. They see what's happening compared to where they are.
Yeah, so that's the only one I know in Community Board 3. I don't know that everybody's happy all over, but it's the only one I know in Community Board 3, and I do know they're very happy.
Paul, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so one of our new members, Larry Fenn, I think he volunteers for NYC Mesh. So he might be able to get the stats for that, the 5 internet service providers and that bridge the NYCHA division digital guide. So Divide, I think he might be able to assist with that.
That's a good call. He mentioned
He's-
that. the other day.
He offered to do it in human services for
Right.
the committee, so we can ask him if he's able to narrow it down for NYCHA.
Yep.
And we could probably also get it from NYCHA, no?
Yes, we probably could also get it from the chat.
So we do work with them.
Any other questions or comments on this? So it seems like we just have that one outstanding thing about the supply, and I will put something together on that and circulate it to the group. We'll clean up the document, just accept all of these changes and verify the statistics. And then you'll see this again we don't have an August meeting, you'll see this again in September, when it's part of the complete district needs with all the other sections. And there'll be the opportunity, I guess, to approve all of it all together. But at that time, we'll also be doing the budget priorities.
Do the budget in October,
Oh, October.
because we're still going to consultations in September.
Okay,
I believe everything gets voted on together, district needs and the budget
In October.
in October.
in October. Okay. It's the only thing on the agenda. So unless y'all want to hang out and talk about anything else, I'm still not feeling well, so I'd rather not do that. I need to do the final roll call. Okay. So I will do roll call. Thank you all for being here tonight. So Anisha, Stephen, yes. Where did my little thing go? Jake Gold,
Yeah.
Herman Hewitt,
Yes.
Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Olympia Kazi, absent, Maris is absent, Jackie is absent, Dominic is absent, and Steve is absent. With that, we'll see you in September. We'll end at full board. Thank you all. Good night.
As a reminder, full board is on a Monday, July 25th on Zoom.
Want to give a
Okay.
reminder on the election?
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.